Coming to you from his downtown Denver studio, here's the Backstage Jazz Radio Show with your host, Steve Roby.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Backstage Jazz Show. I'm Steve Roby. My guest today is jazz trumpeter Greg Gisbert. He will be performing several times this month at Dazzle on Saturday, September 23rd with the group Electric Giz, and then on Monday, September 25th, he'll appear with Grammy-nominated jazz pianist Art Landy. But wait, that's not all. 2 days later, he's back at Dazzle on the 27th and 28th for 4 shows with Chie Imaizumi's Little Big Band, which features the legendary Randy Brecker. Wow. Welcome to the Backstage Jazz Show, Greg.
Hello, Steve. Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you here. You have an extremely long list of jazz musicians you've recorded and performed with over the years. Could we start with some of your early mentors and your inspiration to become a musician?
Well, Steve, I grew up in a musical family in Littleton, Colorado, and I always had support for music in the home, and music was always part of life. So that was my earliest inspiration, was to be around music, around my family. And my dad was a director, so was my mom. And from the time I was 2 years old, I was listening to Buddy Rich and had a pair. So my very first professional gig was with Buddy Rich.
Nice.
In terms of the big time. And it was one of my heroes and mentors, the living legend Bobby Shew, who introduced me to Buddy Rich. And later, one of my friends was able to get me on that band saying, this is the student Bobby Shew told you about. And my other mentor at that time was Clark Terry, the great legendary Clark Terry. Of course, our Denver icon, Freddie Rodriguez Sr.
Mm-hmm. What inspired you to become a musician?
I really loved the drums from the time I was a little kid. And when I was 10 years old, we had to pick a different instrument to play in band. And I played my mom's cornet. Well, I had heard Maynard Ferguson on a record from the school library. And I decided, well, I'll play this trumpet cornet thing. And until I can, play more drums. Mm-hmm. And that all changed was the day I saw Clark Terry walk out on stage at the University of Northern Colorado in the old, I think it was called Foundation Hall or something, this almost like old style chapel auditorium. And when Clark Terry walked out and people went nuts for him and he looked so happy and so cool, I told my dad, I said, hey, Dad, I want to play trumpet. And he said, you haven't even heard him yet. And I said, I don't care. I want to be like that guy.
What a great story. I always like to pinpoint a musician's moment with like the exact second they go, yeah, that's what I want to do for the rest of my life. Thanks for sharing that. That's great.
My pleasure.
Good. Hey, can we jump ahead now to your New York City years? I mean, there's so much in your career, but let's talk about the New York City years. And could you share a memory for our listeners with some of the greats you worked with there?
Well, when I first moved to New York City, I actually got my first taste of reality playing in wedding bands and playing in subways and Grand Central Station. It's no secret that, like in New York City, that's sort of an epicenter for where everybody around the world goes to give it a shot. So I basically paid a lot of dues the first couple of years, playing a lot of music that wasn't very necessarily rewarding financially or otherwise.
Sure.
But the thing that happened when I moved to New York that like absolutely changed my life is I played one gig with Maria Schneider and John Fedchalk Big Band, and then their big bands separated. They did separate projects. And I still to this day play on Grammy-winning Maria Schneider's jazz orchestra, and it's been since September 12th, 1989. So that was the time. I take that back. Excuse me, October 12th, and that was the thing that just really, to this day, connects me to that dream. As I still get to play with Maria Schneider, and from that point, I was able to play with so many of my heroes that I listened to on records and saw perform live. And when I moved to New York, also Clark Terry, he put me on a gig that was the who's who in jazz. It was the Mingus Epitaph double big band. So, and that was the first time I got to meet and play with the great Randy Brecker.
As I mentioned, you'll be playing many shows at Dazzle this month. So many you can probably count them on two hands, I guess. Well, let's start with the 4 shows with Chie Imaizumi's Little Big Band. How did you connect with Chie and Randy?
Well, as I mentioned, I met Randy for the first time sometime in 1991 in a rehearsal in New York. And I've always been a huge fan. And it's just such an honor to know him. And he's such a great example of a warm and loving spirit on earth playing music. So he was always a huge inspiration for me. And as fate would have it, the Brecker brothers, and particularly Randy Brecker and his writing, drew Chie Imaizumi into music as well. So she and I share a common hero. Well, one of my other heroes is the woman I mentioned earlier, Maria Schneider. And that's also sort of a hero for Chie as well. So Chie came to New York in 2005, March of 2005, to hear Maria Schneider's band. She and some friends came, and they were studying her music already in Berklee College of Music. Even though Maria had only been on the scene for like 2 or 3 years, she made that much of an impact. So Chie and her friends came to hear the show, and afterwards Chie gave me a copy of her demo CD and asked me if I'd be willing to listen to it and to be honest. Don't be nice. Well, I said I can be both. And so I listened to her music, and I absolutely fell in love with her music. And she asked me what I thought, and I said, I love your music, and I can't stand your band. So it was one of those like at the time, it was like, it was more of like a tongue-in-cheek joke. And then I told her, I said, look, I really want to play your music, and I want to record your music. I said, I can assemble an incredible band for you, and we can play your music the way it deserves to be played. And she said, sure. And she invited a few of her friends from that recording that she made. And I invited Gary Simoleon, and I put the band together in Denver with the legendary Ron Miles and Paul Romaine and Mark Simon and Mike Abbott and John Gunther. And they'll all be part of our performance September 27th and 28th.
Great. You sent over some music, and we'll start with a track called A Change for the Better from Chie Imaizumi's album called Unfailing Kindness. What can you tell our listeners about this album and track? You've already mentioned the album there, so let's focus on the track.
Well, the track is actually in the spirit of what we do in music and what we're all hopefully working towards is being kind, unfailing kindness to people and unconditional love. And mental wellness, emotional wellness, spiritual wellness is what music is about. And that's particularly what the Dazzle is about. You know, Dazzle's a wonderful place. And Dazzle gave Chie and myself the chance, not knowing much about her, and they just trusted me. Thank you, Donald. Anyway, so we did a rehearsal and 3 shows at the Dazzle on Lincoln Street, and then we recorded the next day, and we recorded the whole album in one day.
Wow.
And I hope you enjoy it. Chie's melodies are so incredibly healing and beautiful. I absolutely love her music and love her and love everybody in the band and Dazzle, and we're so excited to bring that spirit of unconditional love and unfailing kindness and support to everybody through music at Dazzle.
Great. Well, listen, in fact, we had Chie on a few shows ago, and she's a great person to talk with, and she's got some great stories too. Let's listen to the track, A Change for Better now, here on the Backstage Jazz Show. If you're just joining us, my guest today is jazz trumpeter Greg Gisbert. Greg, let's play another track from that same album. This one's called Round and Round. What would you like to add about this one?
It's the first song that I heard from that aforementioned demo CD that Chie gave me. And so that's the song that really grabbed my ear right away. And it's based off of the form of the George Gershwin song, I Got Rhythm, which it's a jazz foundation is to improvise over that basic set of chord changes. And I know that Chie wrote this as sort of a challenge and an assignment while she was at Berklee. And I can honestly say, even though it's almost 20 years later, I'm still practicing it. And it's super, super fun to play.
Okay, well, let's give that a listen to now. This one's called Round and Round, here on the Backstage Jazz Show. listening to Backstage Jazz, and our guest today is trumpeter Greg Gisbert. Besides being a great musician, Greg, you're also an educator, right?
I guess my foundation of being a mentor or coach or educator is rooted in that both my parents were music teachers, and I also have always felt like a student. I've never felt like I've got this figured out. So I think being a student consistently and dedicating oneself to being willing to learn and grow puts me in a headspace of being able to connect with people of all ages that are courageously taking on learning a new instrument and playing in front of people and a whole new language. And this language is, in my experience, best conveyed through experience and repetition and listening. And then after all of that, as a foundation, then we can use a lot of the analytical side of playing jazz music that is really, really a very fascinating part of it too. But I think that the foundation and inspiration for me to be a teacher, as people say, is more of a way to pay forward and pay back, but pay it forward, because that's how I learned to play, was by the willingness of people who were there when this music was created,
right,
passing it on to somebody and then showing me how to do it and being honest and most of the time kind enough to say, son, that sounds terrible. Don't do that. And I've enjoyed trying to find ways to encourage people, regardless of their age, when they're playing music, to say to share with them, it's already inside of them. That's something we all have. That's one of the connective things we have as humans, regardless of dialect, our origin, is that aside from probably a handful of people on planet Earth, people feel music, whether they like it or not. We all feel it. And that's an important aspect that I love about being in the position to be a so-called teacher, is to play a sincere, responsible, disciplined role in passing on what I have learned and what I've changed, or not, I guess not changed, but what I've learned and how it's become part of how I approach playing music. But even more importantly than that, these people that were my mentors that I didn't get a chance to talk about, like James Moody and Jimmy Heath and Frank Wess and Clyde Hampton and Roy Hargrove and so many, of course, like mentioned Quartieri and Bobby Shue and Freddie Rodriguez here and Paul Warburton, may he rest in peace, and so many people. And the Krantz family, Anna and Angela and Alice Krantz and Jerry Krantz, of course, from the El Chapultepec. He was somebody that let us play and let us, as long as we behaved ourselves, we could come in there and learn to play jazz from people that were playing jazz, as opposed to learning it from a book.
Thank you. Well, let's talk about some of the other many shows that you're playing at Dazzle this month. And you're no stranger to Dazzle. You've been playing there for, 25 years?
Yes, sir.
Wow.
Absolutely love Dazzle.
Yeah, and especially their new location at the Denver Arts Performing Center. It's just a beautiful venue.
When I went to hear John Gunther play the music of Ron Miles there, and I heard the sound, even in the bar, when I heard the sound, I teared up. It's so good. And Donald and his team at Dazzle has, to me, in my honest experience, has presented the greatest jazz club on the planet.
So some of the other shows you're playing with jazz pianist Art Landy, and then with Chie Imaizumi, which we mentioned, and the Electric Giz. What can you tell us about the other shows there?
Well, with the duo with Art Landy, is just what I can tell you is that I cannot wait to play. We get to actually meet up and play together a week before the actual show, which is on September 25th at 7 p.m. Well, what I can tell you is that Art Landy is one of my favorite people and musicians and mentors or spirit guides or musical shamans. And has such a powerful, positive, loving influence since he moved to the Colorado community back in the 80s. And he's somebody that's always been very honest, clear, supportive, and patient with helping pass on the freedom of playing music and helping our entire community that's ever known him and worked with Art Landy, or I don't like the word worked, really played music with Art. We're all just so much better musicians and people from having that experience. So all I can say is it'll be an experience that I can't wait to play for people and play with Art. But he and I have no idea what's going to happen either. But I can promise you this, it'll be magical.
And then the band Electric Giz?
Electric Giz came out. It's a very interesting path to be playing in a context of playing a more modern electric band, electric concept. And going back to Randy Brecker, that was my one of my very first albums was Heavy Metal Bebop. And love that sound, the Brecker brothers, heavy metal bebop, and all. And Randy was a pioneer in the what's now a very expansive, creative pathway with electronics and programming and such. Well, Maria Schneider told me she wanted me to play a solo using electronics, and I told her, "Well, I don't do that. Get somebody else to do that." I said, I just don't want to put an effect on there and play that stuff, because people put time, money, and creativity into their sounds and how to use them and when to use them. I said, I don't know how to do all that. And she said, well, maybe somebody could show you. And I told her about my friend, Michael Lenson, a.k.a. Mickey Lenny. And he has the equipment. So she said, well, why don't you meet with him and try it and see if you'd like to do this? So I met with Michael, and we worked out some sounds, and I started to have fun with it. And he programs everything. I don't touch anything that's plugged in. And but he's a former student from CCJA and went to University of Miami. And so long story short is that he and I sent these samples to Maria. Maria loved it, and she hired him to program all the effects for the solo that I played on her latest release called Data Lords. And the track is called CQ. Is anyone there? So Electric Giz started by me trying to avoid doing it, basically. and now I'm hooked. And the thing that's so special to me about this band is that I've known Michael and his family for decades, and they've been part of Paul Romaine and Chris Romaine's jazz organization, which is called CCJA, Colorado Conservatory for the Jazz Arts. And that's how I met pretty much everyone I know from the younger generations. Michael Lenson is a part of it, and he's Sonia Walker's playing piano on that. She was a part of it. Let's see, a couple. There's only two of those. We have a new friend from Chico, just 22 years old, that's playing drums, and Connor Taronis, our bassist guitarist. So, and our friend Jake's playing drums. It's a band that's actually, we're going to be playing our second performance at Dazzle on Saturday, September 23rd at 7.
Nice. I think I just want to set up a cot outside of Dazzle and just catch all these shows and just can't get enough.
Well, for me, it's I live a half a block from Dazzle, so if I can find a hide a bed.
There you go. There you go. Hey, one of the talking points you sent over today, and I find it very moving, was that you wanted to talk about the power of music to connect people, which I found very interesting. We don't have much time left, but could you elaborate on that a bit?
For me, music is something I knew before any other form of connection was in communication was music. There was so much music around at home. And but I also noticed that, like, as I got older and started, going to school, by the time I got to high school, I started to see just how cliquey and cruel the world could be. And particularly for those of us that don't walk the expected robotic follow your orders path. And so, and most artists and really creative and exceptionally driven people often have the experience of being either isolated or perhaps having some anxiety because they don't necessarily fit in with what all their peers are doing. And for me, being a musician gave me a chance to be around people in their 80s and 90s that were playing music before the civil rights movement. So I was getting an education and a mentorship and seeing all ages and all kinds of people that, to me, they were heroes. And I could also see the struggles they were facing, the external struggles such as racism and sometimes poverty, and then internal stuff or visible stuff such as health issues and the obvious issues that we have with chemical and substance abuse and chemical dependency that sort of take the center stage whenever we talk about mental wellness. Well, those issues with mental wellness start long before anybody finds a temporary solution, such as drinking, drugging, or antidepressants, or anything of the nature where we use those to assist us feel better or feel nothing. So, unfortunately, most of those kind of solutions put us in a place where we feel nothing. And I'm speaking from personal experience from that, not to get on a soapbox, but I have found that the greatest asset that's kept me around and gave me a chance is being part of music and the unconditional love and the unfailing kindness that I was around all the time. And I was around people that when they could see that something wasn't right, they'd say, "Hey, young blood, are you okay? What's going on?" And I wouldn't want to talk about it. And I just, tighten my belt and say, "I'm okay." Well, that "I'm okay" turned into I was not okay after 30 years of closing off and not asking for help or not accepting help and just being kind of ashamed that things were going well on the outside, but on the inside, nothing was going well. And I think as human beings, every one of us can relate to that.
Absolutely.
So my hope through this interview and just sort of like an unspoken mission statement is to be willing to reach out if I see somebody or even just feel like maybe, "Are you okay?" And if they say, "I'm fine," accept that as the answer, but let them know that in music, we have a infinite supply and resource of love and forgiveness. I know this because I've experienced that, and it's why I'm here today.
Wow.
So a lot of times people use the word mental health or mental illness, and right away there's an attachment of a stereotype. I don't know. This could be weird, or just grow up, that sort of thing. Pull it together, or just take a pill. When maybe all we need to do to start the healing is communicate and connect. And I've been very fortunate because I have music to do that. And my feeling about how we connect this to mental wellness is that we want to give of our souls and hearts and thrill people, touch people with the music, take them somewhere. Take them somewhere where they might actually have to look down for a second because they're tearing up, or they might want to yell and scream like, "This is incredible." Either way, it's about connecting with people and realizing that we all go through these worlds of the entire spectrum of human emotions. And in our fast-paced world and quick-fix world, we're leaving our brothers and sisters, friends and families. We're leaving people behind if we turn our shoulder or look away when people are struggling with mental wellness issues.
Thanks.
We might not have to be the person. We might not have to be the person to physically help them, but we might be able to point them in a direction to somebody that can. So that's what's got me here on this earth talking with you, Steve.
Thanks for sharing that, Greg. Hey, and if you ever get around to writing a book about your life and your thoughts that you just expressed there, sign me up. I'll be one of the first people to buy a copy.
Oh, that's very kind. Well, I'm considering, right, that I have to change the names to protect the innocent.
Wow, that was great. I really appreciate you sharing that. Let's remind our listeners about the many shows that you've got coming up at Dazzle, downtown Denver, at the Performing Arts Center, several times this month at Dazzle. First starting with on September 23rd with the group Electric Giz, and then on Monday, September 25th, you'll appear with Grammy-nominated jazz pianist Art Landy. Then you're back on the 27th and 28th of September for 2 shows a night, with Chie Imaizumi's Little Big Band, which also features the legendary Randy Brecker. You can pick up tickets and tickets at dazzledenver.com. Greg, thank you so much for your time today, and have a great run at Dazzle.
Thank you, Steve, and you're so welcome, and look forward to seeing you.
You've been listening to the Backstage Jazz Show on the Arts Validation Network. Join us next time for more great jazz and interviews with your favorite musicians.